Let's see. Oh, we are live. Yes. It is 4 o'clock on the dot. It's 2 o'clock in California.
It is.
You know, I have a friend who, whenever I say Cali, she's like, you stop. So if you don't live here, stop. Don't do that.
Even those of us who live here don't do that. Some of us.
I mean, she teases me so
Yeah,
bad. I'm
so
going to call her when I finish.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. Look, I just jumped right in. Welcome, everyone, to yet another edition, special edition. All of them are special, of Meet the Author. I have the honor and the pleasure of speaking to an old friend who, like, you know how you have those friends, it's like whenever you talk, you just pick right up and it just moves, you know? And it's always like really encouraging. It's always like, yep, you got this. Mm-hmm. That's Graciela. And I'm just super excited to be here with her today. We're going to talk about some of everything. Thank you all for joining. If you're joining right now, I do believe my handy dandy assistant, who has only been helping me with the Meet the Author series lately. Her and I both have a lot going on, and we've just been transitioning. Kalila should be on Facebook, ready for the commentary that should come in or could come in as a result of this conversation. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for spending your Sunday afternoon into evening with us. Super excited today. Before we dig in, let me tell you why the whole Meet the Author series is so special. I just realized this. I was in the bathroom, like making myself presentable, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm biased. I've only interviewed women. Yikes, you know? And on top of that, I've only interviewed women that I deem are like inspiring and accomplished and doing the real work. And I just thought I need to talk about that a little bit before we dig in, because it's more than just writing children's books. Because again, my neighbor, she's always, oh, she writes children's books. And you know, it's like, yeah, that's a thing, but it's bigger than that, right? Mm-hmm. It's actively engaging the community at large in this broader conversation about what literacy development is, access, what culturally responsive and authentic is. And right now it seems like this is the perfect time, but we've been doing this for a while. This isn't something we just started doing because we need diverse books.
Right.
We've been doing this for a minute. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Again, I have the honor and pleasure, and this is the official welcome, of chatting with the ultimate Graciela Tiscareno-Sato. Hello there. Did I say that right?
You always say it well, and you always say it right. You've had a lot of practice. No,
I have.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I have.
Thanks for having me. This is great. And thank you for rescheduling from last week so that I could go catch a salmon.
Did you catch salmon?
We caught a salmon, king salmon.
That is, yep. I saw the pictures, because it was also my uncle's services. So there was a lot going on for both of us. But I did see a photo of you and hubby out, I believe, at the water. But I didn't see the catch. That is awesome. Did you guys eat it?
Well, it's our 29th wedding anniversary. And since we honeymooned in Alaska to catch halibut, it's kind of a theme. We just go fishing on it. It's like, why not? Right.
Right.
And so we did. And he actually caught that one. I caught a smaller one, but it was too small to keep. But he caught the one that was a size to keep. And then we brought it home. And what we do is we freeze him and then we turn him into sashimi. So we'll be eating him next weekend. So.
Wow, he is going to be eating next weekend. I hope he's okay with that.
Yeah, he's good. And his fish head is already in our garden. So we raise gardeners. So I just take the head and put it at the bottom where we planted tomatoes. So the fish is all going to be all good and continuing to give us all his energy. So
You've been doing that on Instagram. Like, you've been posting some amazing photos. Like, we're just digging right in, like freestyle right now. Because I did have like a plan, but this is what happens when you and I talk. Like, we just go there. So you've been posting some really cool pictures on Instagram from the garden, like farm to table concept. Like, how has that been?
Well, I always wanted to do this, but I was never home pre-COVID because I travel so much, right?
Right.
How you and I met, in Houston. But because of the pandemic and, finally being held to be at home, this is my coping mechanism. Like,
Yeah.
literally the very first thing that happened after the shelter in place order came is I put on my headlamp at 10 o'clock at night, went outside with my shears and started cutting away blackberries. And there's probably some analogy about clearing the stuff in your life or something.
Totally.
I don't know. Somebody else can think about that. But I went outside and I started cutting blackberries that were just everywhere so we could make space to start the food forest. And little by little, day by day, week by week, we now have something that we can eat growing on all four sides of our house. So that's the silver lining for, you know, the lifestyle shift and being contained that we've had to do. So
yeah,
it's been a whole family project. So we've been building garden beds and all of that. So yeah, I'm glad you've been able to come along for the ride.
Totally. You know, I love the kids. TM took to your son when he came, when you guys came.
Yeah.
It was the second time. Was it the second time?
I remember going there in 2015 with my son for the activity at Texas A&M. I think that's
when it was. Golly, that was a long time ago.
6 years. That's how we've known each other in person. We met before that online, but 6 years in person. Yep.
That is unbelievable. Man, okay. So I want to go there, but I want to give a little more context to this traveling, how we met, and the garden and the resourcefulness. You are like seriously a woman of all trades. But the thing that I know when we started to engage is I fell in love with Goodnight Captain Mama for so many reasons. And you know this because you've continuously tagged me on Instagram. I used to have this dream, this lofty dream that I would go into the Air Force. But because, like we talk about it all the time, I didn't see any Black or brown women in the Air Force when I was in school, right? So it seemed unattainable at that time. And honestly, it was just like it went away and I never thought about it again, right? Fast forward, it's like, wow, you know what would my life have been? So when I first discovered your work, I was just mesmerized, like, wait, she's won awards from the White House just for going, you know, doing what she loves, like flying this plane and doing these things. And the conversation started from there. I mean, give us some background on your travels, your time in the military, like give us some background.
Yeah. Well, you know, I remember when you told me that you had that idea, but you didn't pursue it. And again, you didn't have examples and it seemed kind of, you know, out of reach. And that's really why I do what I do now, Tiffany, because, you know, I'm the daughter of Mexican immigrants. And so nobody in my family served in the military before me. We had no history of that. And certainly there's lots of families who have had multiple generations of military officers and, you know, service, but I had zero. And so my story of how the Air Force found me comes from mentoring in high school and me showing up in my counselor's office saying, so how does a kid like me go to college? That was the question, because I'd heard it was possible, but how exactly does that happen? And having my counselor say, come to my house for dinner. My husband's family is even bigger than yours. He grew up in Appalachia. And Major Wendell Burgess is how I learned that there was an Air Force ROTC scholarship that would make college possible for a kid like me to not only go to an elite university, but to enter the service 4 years later with my education completed and as a military officer. So that just happened because of the guy that happened to be married to my high school counselor. And yes, as people remind me, give myself some credit that I kept showing up and asking this question, right?
Yeah.
So that's how my focus ever turned to the Air Force in the first place, knowing nobody there, but having my counselor's husband be an Air Force major. And I tell people, well, why'd you join the Air Force? Well, if he'd been in the Navy, I would have gone to the Navy because he was my one and only mentor in that direction. So it starts there. That's an important thing I want to say because, you know, it's like luck, but it's also the asking of the questions. How can I go do that? And that's where it started. And then I got the scholarship. My counselor helped me get into Berkeley, you know, do the application. And then my parents, who were completely shocked that I had aspirations to move 1,100 miles away to a college I've never seen, they took me anyway. So it was really rebellious against the cultural norms of moving far away to go to college for a Latina, right? But they didn't stop me. They took me. And then 4.5 years later, I entered the Air Force as a second lieutenant, went straight to flight training. And yeah, I flew for 9.5 years on the KC-135, the refueling jet. And I can't keep those stories to myself, and especially the how it was possible. That's why I'm writing these books and speaking in English and Spanish about my origins to higher education, to military aviation, and doing it through children's books to reach more people in English and Spanish, because, you can't be what you can't see continues to be true, right?
Totally. I love. So last year I was just doing an interview. You know Gladys, Gladys Elizabeth, who rode Pink Fire Trucks, and what's my other favorite one? Yes. So I was just chatting with her via email, and we were talking about this whole child reimagined for Black and brown kids. But it reminded me that last year we had done a whole child session, if you will, and we talked about the importance of school counselors. Yeah. And I absolutely love the fact that it sounded like from the story that there was a relationship there, right? Yeah, you walked in and asked a question, but you are still a young person, right?
Yeah.
And the guidance was readily available to you. And what we're seeing right now in another world, and we're going to talk about this, as we move forward, is the thing that above being seen and being visible, right? Because you can't be what you can't see. Is that guidance, having, someone to come to and ask that question.
Yeah.
I love that. Because here again, I too went to my counselor, and she told me, she was like, oh, you're a writer. I'm gonna put you in these honors classes. I'm gonna send you here. Right. But still, it was that relationship was there, and the guidance, it was, I do want to help you with this. So it's very familiar. Wow. Okay. So since you can't keep the stories to yourself, we do want to talk about that. Tell me, because both of us also have this whole, the children's book. The thing that's also in common is we both feature our sons in the children's book. And you talked about the garden and how this is the norm. I'm used to not being here. The very first Goodnight Captain Mama book is just that, right? You are suiting up and you got to go. And baby boy,
I'm going to show the picture in the book.
Please do. Please do.
He is suiting up and I got to go. So keep going.
And baby boy is like, wait. Like, he just happens to still be up, right? And he's like, Mom, where are you going? And I mean, literally, he's going to bed, right? He's on his way to bed. And there's hubby. There you are, all suited. And you're literally about to go fuel and fly.
Yeah. I'm going to fly for a while tonight while you sleep. Papa's here overnight to keep you safe. I'll be here in the morning when you wake up. So yeah, he's going to bed and he says, good night, Captain Mama, sends a little salute. And that's it. It's like she has to go on a night mission and he's going to bed and Papa's there and Mama's got to go do something that she does. Yeah.
That's real life for you.
Yeah. That really is.
Real life.
That is actually real life.
Are they all night trips, or, is it just rotated?
Well, military aviation is a lot of training, right? So some of the days, it's just going to the base and doing, a 3-hour mission locally, go up, refuel, come back. And I keep saying refuel, and I should talk about that. My job was to serve on a flying gas station. And basically, it's a flying gas station. I'm going to show you an illustration. So the KC-135 in the Air Force is the plane that attaches itself to other airplanes in the sky. There's a boom right here. And we pump gas from the 10 tanks into any other plane that needs it. And it might be a big plane like this, or it might be a smaller plane. But this was my job on the plane. So this is what it looks like in the back. Here's a tactical fighter. So my job was to do the mathematics to get the planes together in the sky at exactly the right latitude and longitude at exactly the right time, so that we end up 3 miles in front of the receiver, and then they come up and get their gas. So that's important to understand, that that's where I was working, right? And so to do that, obviously tons of training. And there's the first year of training where you're just learning how to be in a flight deck and your station of stuff, whether you're the pilot over there or the navigator, as I was over here. And then after you learn the basics, you get your wings. And then you go to the crew airplane. And that's where I learned to fly with 3 other people. So the 2 pilots, the boom operator who flies the boom in the back of the plane, and then myself. So it's crew coordination that you learn. And then you get checked out in this plane. And then they basically bless you and say, off to fly anywhere in the world. And then you're ready to go.
Wow.
So once you get to your base, the training continues. So some days you just go up and you do a local mission, like take off. I was in Washington State, Tiffany. So we would take off, go somewhere over Idaho or Montana or just off the coast of Seattle, refuel somebody, and then come back and land. So you practice takeoff, landing, refueling, the whole thing. But then, you also had to do it at night because a lot of refueling does happen in, war zones and tactical environments in the dark with lights off. Right. So the boom operators have to be able to attach the boom to another plane in the dark. And the pilots that are getting the gas have to be able to fly under another plane and do that connection in the dark, right? So you practice day, you practice night. So the flights could be short, they could be long. And then, of course, there's the deployments, right? Yeah. And so the deployments are going to be weeks, months in, somewhere else. But you also do things like fly, a very popular thing, we called it the sushi run. Speaking of fish and sashimi, we would take off out of Fairchild Air Force Base and we would just fly direct to Yokota Kiji, which is Yokota Air Base in southern Japan, west of Tokyo. So that was literally flying into headwind all the way to Japan, cargo loaded. It was a cargo run, not a refueling run. Landing in Japan, offloading a bunch of cargo, and then staying on the ground 15 hours, just long enough to, eat, drink, take a nap, and then fly back. So those are sushi runs. So there's all kinds of missions for a plane like this that is part of Air Mobility Command that takes people, takes stuff. But the primary mission is the flying gas station.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I love it for so many reasons because I know that has everything to do with why, you're always itching to travel, right? Go, go, go.
I think I got programmed to go and like, where else have I not been? I have the map on the wall with the pins of all the places that I lived in. But a funny thing happens, like I see those, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I got to go to all those places. Again, considering where I come from.
Yeah.
Never having been on a plane until I was 20, halfway through college, right?
Yeah, totally.
But now, like, I don't see the pins so much. It's like, oh, I haven't been to Egypt yet. I've just been over it a couple of times. Like all the places that are still left to go. So yeah, that's always there. That's always there.
I think this is, again, so important. I love the fact that when we speak, we can speak very authentically and candidly about this, immigrant conversation, this Latina conversation, what it's like, for Indigenous families, not all, but some, right? With having the opportunity to do these things.
Right.
It's very important. This narrative that is currently playing out with regards to social justice is long overdue. Yeah. And we it's humanity. Nobody's pardoned here. Have to do a better job of saying, this is about equality. This is about equity, right? And it's for that reason that opportunities like number one, you don't know what you're good at until you know, and you need an experience. You need an opportunity, right? But I also love what you just said about, thinking about this. And I want to say you and I have talked about this. Even in my cohorts, when, I'm engaging in PD for, the STEM lessons that I facilitate, is we have this quote unquote belief that girls are, better at English and not so much as math, right? And we're seeing that scale tip. So you talked about math, and we talk about this all the time. Math needs to be, as science, technology, engineering, and so forth, needs to be more relative. So if I say to a girl, sweetheart, you're going to need this because one day you could very well go into the Air Force and have to be precise with your measurement, right? And you're going to need this science because of, some of the similar reasons. Right. It does really broaden, again, this conversation about Black and brown women engaging in these technical fields for reasons, not just basic education, but career focused reasons and resourceful reasons. Talk about the STEM aspect, because we're going to get into Latinovations in a minute. Because I'm giving those. I'm going to give 2 copies away.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Whew. Well, okay. So first of all, when I was listening to what you were saying, I have to tell you the story that affirms for me how important this is.
Yeah.
Okay. As soon as we released the first book in the series, I was asked to speak at a Title I school. African-American counselor, male counselor friend of mine who's at the school, he called me up and he says, I would love to have you come be our guest author for Veterans Day at my elementary school and do the entire assembly in Spanish, because 78% of the kids in this school are English language learners. I'm like, I am so there because
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
So it was like, wow, a Veterans Day assembly in Spanish. Awesome. Like 10 minutes to my house. So we projected the images. The whole school was there, kindergarten through fifth, everybody. And the thing that I'll never forget was what happened at the end. There's a ton of questions. Again, this is my first school assembly that I'm doing as a children's book author. So I remember we ran out of time. There's still more questions. And then the teachers asked the kids to get up and leave. And this little girl in the front row, she just is walking by. She gets right in front of me and she stops. Like the kids kind of bump into her as she stops.
Yeah.
But she has something to say and she's going to say it. She pulls on my sleeve and she says, Capitana Mama, yo también quiero volar aviones como tú. Which means, Captain Mama, I want to fly in the airplanes like you did too.
Wow.
So imagine hearing that the very first time you go out into the world to tell the story of your service, and how it inspired the books and the story of a child whose mom does this. And then how excited was this little girl that she had to stop and tell me directly that she wants to do this too. Totally. I will never forget what that felt like. And I remember going out to my car later and going, oh my God, like it just kind of hit me because it takes years to make these books.
Yeah.
But here's what I said to her, to your point. Okay. I got down on one of my knees and I held her hand and I said, you're going to learn all the math, all the science, all the English, all the reading, everything you need to learn to grow up to fly airplanes or anything else you want to do. And don't let anybody tell you that you can't. Because yes, there are the stereotypes of who can do what and who's good at what and who belongs where and all these things that educators just say, maybe out of good intentions, that are basically like predicting where this child's going to be when we have no idea what they can actually be good at until they're doing it. Like nobody could have predicted I'd be great as an aviator when I was 5, right? Totally. But I was imagining that, maybe her own mother, this little girl's own mother, if she goes home and says, yeah, we heard this lady talk about airplanes. I could see her own mother. If she's anything like my immigrant mother, her own mother would probably say to her, ¿Estás loca? Like, you crazy? Like girls don't do that. Yeah. So that is why I'm so intentional with the Spanish to reach communities like where I grew up, and why I'm so intentional with the images of the women as the leaders. I just saw a thing this week that said, we tell boys, we tell girls that boys don't mature as fast as girls, and so we should cut them some slack. But we don't tell the boys that girls mature faster than you, so you should look to them as examples of leadership. I just saw this on Instagram. I'm like, see, that's why, right? So I'm so intentional. Look at the crew. She is the one in charge. She's the aircraft commander. He's the co-pilot. And then Captain Mama's the navigator. And then she's the boom operator. And then he is the one who takes care of the jet on the ground. So 3 out of 4 of the crew members are women. And do this very intentionally, because the Air Force now, Tiffany, is over 20% women.
Wow.
At the Air Force Academy right now, where we produce the majority of our officers, the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, the class that just finished their first year, 33% women.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we are everywhere. And I need people to stop stereotyping and understand that women and girls have been flying every airplane, all the combat jets. They've been commanding combat jet squadrons and wings. We have generals who are fighter pilots. But unless we get out there with our stories as women who have served and tell these stories, and I'm doing it in a way that I can reach millions with children's books, then the prevalent stereotype tradition will continue in the minds of people who just don't know. And then our kids don't get those opportunities because nobody suggested them.
See, so Irie, who was the second guest, who I also dearly love, phenomenal children's author, reading system instructor, she just said, I have a 14-year-old young family member who will be so inspired by watching this conversation. She has such a deep desire to become a female pilot. She signed up for junior cadet training pre-COVID and will pick up again soon. We're so proud of her.
Okay, so I want to say Women in Aviation International. I want to say scholarships.
Yeah.
And for anybody who is in the Latinx community, there is a book called, well, it's for everybody, okay, but I'm going to do a two-part here. In August last year, Jackie Ruiz, who is a Latina private pilot in Chicago, she brought 22 of us together who are military veterans and currently in the industry. You know, some people are flying 787s out of Kuwait. She grew up in Salvador. Some people are working as mechanics.
Totally.
But it's called Latinas in Aviation. It's 22 stories written by us about our time in aviation roles. And the reason I'm mentioning specifically the Hispanic community is because Jackie created a scholarship to fund more Latinas getting up in the air, get ground school, get their flight time, and get their licenses. So we have to create this change. We have to create the literature and the stories and be interviewed and be out there to show ourselves so that this 14-year-old you're talking about can see that she might be the only one in her school that's even thinking about this, but please connect with all of us who've already done it and
It's
are doing
possible
it right now. Right?
Yeah,
It's
totally.
like the whole, how do I do it? You know, if she's 14 and she can connect with one of these women that's already flying for United American or Kuwait Airways on social media and then get some tips and then get a scholarship. And Women in Aviation has a lot of scholarships to get her license and get flying. Then it becomes very real versus thinking that she can't because someone's going to tell her it's expensive and you need a lot of money to get your license. And adults, again, instead of saying, here's what's possible, they'll bring them down. So, you know, parents, teachers encourage, but then unless you yourself have gone through the training and know how hard it is and how long it takes, please connect them with people who are doing it so that they can have that guidance and that inspiration the whole time to get to their goal.
No, I love that. I mean, we talk about the chaos often, but I love the fact that you, like myself, have always been willing to mentor, to say a few words. Like I just talked to a group of young ladies on Friday, and it was so heartwarming that they were like, I mean, a few of them expressed that they were reluctant readers. They didn't do well. And so Dr. Clay is going to have me back to do a reading session just with them. But they were middle school and these girls have had real life happen to them, right?
Yeah.
And when we're talking about these conversations like, hey, seek these women, seek these women, because you're ultimately seeking wisdom, right?
Right. Yeah.
I've gone through it. I've been through it, baby girl. Listen, this is going to be your best bet, right? But also being available, because sometimes women we can get wrapped up in our things, and it can be, you know, tough. You know, we're encouraging other women to continuously give, despite, because challenges come, they come, and asking little girls, hey, seek out these women because they're there. They're more than willing to support you and to help you.
Right. And very important.
That's like a big deal.
No,
that's a big deal.
It is. And
let me see. I think, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. Did I freeze?
You did freeze.
In the back of the second book where we have the picture with the illustrator and I have very specifically in the bio here, that I'm a graduate of UC Berkeley who completed the Aerospace Studies program as an Air Force ROTC, which is the Air Force Reserve Officer Training Program scholarship. So I was a cadet earning my degree in architecture and environmental design. I want to put that right up so that right now you can go, what is that Air Force Reserve Officer Training? What is Air Force ROTC? There's 2-year scholarships and there's 4-year scholarships. Okay. And this is so important for our Black and brown communities. Every time I talk to kids, I'm like, how many of you have already seen recruiters in the cafeteria trying to persuade you to go into the Army or the Marines? Like, they're always there, right?
Yep, pretty much.
They're most aggressively recruiting for our communities. Like, okay, well, that's one way to go in. That's not what I did. I avoided the recruiters because I knew they were there to get me to go right now out of high school. And I was going to go to college to be an educated woman. Okay. So I knew that was what I didn't want, but I didn't know how to go to college, but I'm going to go find out. Right. But too many of our kids go over there and they get caught up in the conversation and they end up joining right out of high school. because they haven't thought of something else. They haven't pursued scholarships. They haven't been encouraged. They haven't found the money. So they think, well, let me go do that and then I'll go to college. Yeah, it's one way to do it. Okay. A lot of people do it that way. But you know what? Let's talk equity. Meanwhile, you've got the mostly white male tradition of military officers are going to West Point. They're going to Annapolis. They're going to the Air Force Academy. So that's why the majority of the officers and the senior officers continue to be white men, because those families already know you don't want to enlist out of high school. No. You want to go in as an officer and be a leader, one day be a colonel and general. Okay. Meanwhile, our kids are going straight in, making less money. Okay. One thing, making less money and not going into immediate leadership roles like you do when you go in as a lieutenant. And I always incur the wrath of recruiters in the military when I say this. It's like, bring it. Okay. Because I know what I'm saying and that there are other ways to serve. And can we talk about power when you're a woman, when you're 18 and you're basic training and you have zero power and you know it? Versus you enter as a lieutenant after college and you're an officer. Okay. Much less likelihood to be seen as a target. Okay. So there's so much in the power structure, Tiffany. There's so much in when we talk about equity. It's like we just cannot continue to have the families that have always been the officers to continue to be the officers. We need more of our community. And we're everywhere. We have Black women officers and women and Latinas, but not enough, right?
Yeah.
There's this, if you look at the statistics, it's really, it's incredible. But that's why it come back to, unless you know that there's another way to wear a uniform and serve that is not coming in right in after high school, unless you know about ROTC or go to college and then complete your degree and then go to officer candidate school, or how do you even go to the Air Force academies? Do people know that? Do they know that they can go to their congressional representative? Hi, I'd like to go to the Air Force Academy. I'd like an appointment. Start that conversation, because the people how do you even get to the academies? You're appointed by your congressman. They get to choose a couple of people to appoint every year to go.
Wow.
Who knows that?
Yeah, totally.
The families who traditionally have had the military officers in their family, which has not been our communities. So this is why I get really vocal about it. And I love to tell my story so you can know about this when you're 5 and when you're in 4th grade and 5th grade. And then, the STEM and aviation that I do in schools. What is airplanes in the first place? They're physics in motion.
Totally.
It's physics in motion. It's all the math and science. That's what an airplane is. It's where it all comes together. So STEM, all the disciplines of STEM are in a jet. And I think that's why it's so fun.
No, I'm sure. Like, I'm vicariously living through you as you're telling, the story of the traveling and the pins on the map. I love it. I also love, because I said this in the comments and I think my comment didn't make it because it said my internet connection is a little unstable, but choices and options are key. I love that you went straight for the jugular. All right. So you already see this in the cafeteria. Yeah. They want you. They're on you, right? Yeah.
They didn't make their quotas.
Totally. And there is some exploitation there, which tends to happen, when you're marginalized. It just is what it is. But here, Graciela says, let me drop some nuggets here. You really want to position yourself better. And being a young person, and I guess I'm framing this from both, the family side and the young person side. Yeah. You want to own your own power, right? Because if whether we're talking about the military career, what have you, your family is going to be supportive, but it's you who has to do that, right? Yep. So you want to go in knowing, okay, this is what's ahead of me, which is all the more reason why I can't say enough. Stories and the delivery, the presentation, the writing, the packaging, the publishing of stories like yours is critical. We can't learn without them. We don't have anything but stories. These stories are key because we're still talking representation in 2021.
Right.
It's pathetic.
Yeah, it is. And, as a Latina who has 3 kids, I have purchased all the heritage books in English and Spanish, the bilingual books. Okay. But I will tell you, when I line them all up and I count and I look at them as a technical product and I look at them as a market researcher and as a publisher, I will tell you that the stories that have been published by, traditional publishers in New York who want to address the market, what are these stories? These, who do they publish? They publish people who bring stories to them about the little girl and her mom making tortillas.
Yeah.
Because that's what they think that we are and what we want to read about. And yes, those have a place. And I have those books, which is why I'm talking about them. Or the other one where the little girl's in the kitchen making chocolate con la abuelita. It's called Abuelita's Chocolate. Okay, well, I love chocolate and my mom likes making chocolate with my kids. But can we please do something else with the girls? And so that is why it's very intentional to say that in these stories that represent my service, mom is flying the jet. And in the second book, she brings the kids to the airplane to do a field trip and meet the crew, which is 3 women and a guy. And in the third book, which we're about to unveil next week, the title and the art, we're taking it airborne. Okay. And again, I'm doing it in 2 languages because it's never been done before. And I'm an innovator. And we're doing it in 2 languages so that parents who read in Spanish can read this crazy story of these women flying this jet and taking their kids around the world, right? And be inspired by that. And then flip it over and say, oh, the author actually did this, right? Who is she? And learn the story. So it is all of those layers while still teaching how important it is to master math and science and technical things that are fun and do careers that you might not know anybody doing, but we're doing them.
I love that you touched on, because I remember again, and I am by all means, and I say this emphatically, I am so anti-oppression, right? Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when I'm finding myself judging, I have to ask, am I doing so because I'm looking to get to the root of the oppression, right? Mm-hmm. I love that you just touched on the books that are out in the marketplace, right? Mm-hmm. And what they actually convey. Mm-hmm. Because I remember getting into this conversation about Black hair, little girls' hair. It's just legislation was just passed. Where was it? With the whole, you can go to school and, your hair, like it's hair, Graciela.
You're trying to regulate my hair. What are you doing? I know.
And again, not saying that we don't need stories about that, because it's very important. I mean, I get wild comments about my hair, right? I mean, from Black folks, like, wow, your hair is so different. But it is my crown and it's very important, right? But as is the conversation about Black women in aviation, Black women in science, right? Black women in anthropology, Black women in politics, Black women who've done all of these incredible things, and not just Black women, brown women, all kinds of women. We need these stories. And now I want to move a little bit, because I know we are totally off of our interview flow. We are this is what happens with me and Graciela. But I do want to talk about, because you touched on it, how the stats are still very low. You and I have been talking about this, the publishing and the authenticity of these stories for some time. Right. I just saw somebody posted that, the scales are still tipped, like the numbers are still very low. Do you know them off the top of your head?
It hasn't climbed beyond 6% of children's books having characters that are, not white. It's like 6.5, maybe even 7, up from 5. But then and that includes Native American, African American, and Hispanic, right? Characters all together. Yeah. So when you break it out, it's like 2% for each of us, which is not okay. And look at our, I don't know if people understand this, Tiffany, but since the fall of 2014 in the K through 12 system, we are already a majority country.
Totally.
Okay, people keep saying, oh, one day, we will be, the demographics have changed. Now, look at who's in school now. Right now. Our kids right now, our generation, it's already existing, and they're already between 5 and 18. It's already like 53% us. Yeah. And, Caucasian is already the minority, right? So we're already there, but we have this desire to think that it's not that, or, whatever's going on with that. But our kids in schools, the consumers of literature that's in schools and libraries, they are 53% multicultural population, but our books are 93% white characters for kids. What is going on? Well, all you got to do is see who's producing them.
Yeah.
Comes back to that, which is why you and I took the paths that we did, and why, Gracefully Global Group is the company that I created. Did you know we just had our 10th birthday? We just had our
No.
10th birthday during the pandemic, and right before Halloween, we had a 10th birthday party. It got here really fast, right? And I lost track of how many ISBNs. We have 4 distinct titles. We have DVDs. We have online classes. We just keep creating for our communities. But the important thing is, because I didn't want to have some guy in New York tell me that I have permission to publish the stories that I know we need. And even if he did say that it was okay to publish my work, like, then he keeps 90% of the money.
Yep.
So if you go with the traditional path, you still end up in an inequitable situation that still
Right.
benefits not your community, which is why so many of us are starting our own publishing companies to publish our stories and eventually other stories of other authors, right? Because of that, the equity thing, because like we want that economic benefit of our creative work versus that we get a nickel for
Yeah.
every 90 cents they keep, right?
Right.
So it's all those issues rolled up, to becoming a social entrepreneur and doing it, saying, I know these stories have value. I know these books are innovative. They've won awards. They'll keep winning awards because we're going to keep creating excellent work. And we're going to benefit my family, my community, and my company. We are the creators, not some dude in New York.
Totally. I mean, I'm going to read this. Whenever I see those stats, I think, and I will admit that I turn an eye to them, because I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't account for the small publishing houses, the Gracielas, the Tiffany's. And I too knew that it needed to be independent, because of those same reasons. So first of all, you're not going to censor me. I've had librarians tell me, oh, it's, we didn't choose it. Oh, it was too Black. Okay. And even with that, when we're talking about the representation in the librarian space, like 4% of librarians are Black, right? So same thing. So we're talking about having to navigate a system that was never designed for us. Right? So in that way, when I see those numbers, I'm like 6%. Okay, but what about all of these phenomenal self-publishing houses that are doing like incredible work, out and about here?
And the answer to that is that's on us to make ourselves visible and be seen, because we can't expect that they're all looking for us. We'd like to think they are, but they're not. I mean, who are we talking about? We're talking about, like our primary buyers are teacher conferences, school districts, individual teachers that buy at conferences or away from conferences because they hear about it some other way. So a lot of educators are finding us because we keep showing up, right?
Right.
And
won't go away.
that requires, our resources and our time and marketing budgets and all of that to even show up to be seen as existing, right? So it is more of a challenge, but that's what any business has to do to be seen by a market that doesn't know you exist. So that's part of it. What I like is being able to maneuver and being able to show up in places where it's unexpected, right?
Yeah.
That's what I really like. And so I really love introducing our company to military bases, school liaison officers, the people who buy for yellow ribbon programs, the programs that get families ready to deploy, because they're not looking for books published by women veterans to talk about their service, because guess what? There's like 3 of us that have ever done it. So it's not even a genre. Like I invented it. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm encouraging more women veterans to write books for kids, because, when women veterans write, they write their memoirs, if they write anything at all. But I'm like, the children's market is wide open and we need more stories that show what you did as a Latina Coast Guard pilot or as a Chinook helicopter pilot, right? The cool things that you do, or maybe you weren't flying, you did something else. Maybe you're a civil engineer, right? But we're not doing that. Like, that's not a genre. So we can't expect educators to be looking for our genre because they don't even know it exists.
Totally.
New, right?
Right.
So that's a big challenge. And, when a lot of national book awards specifically exclude publishing houses that publish less than 10 titles a year, that tells you that the trade is still trying to exclude us.
Yeah.
You cannot compete for the National Book Award unless you're a publisher that publishes I don't know what the number is now, 20. It's a lot. So they literally do not want independent publishers to be in their space. So you know what? That's fine. That's how they roll. And we just have to do it another way. Right.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, I guess in now that it's been 10 years, I can't give time to the systems that intentionally designed to exclude us, like that example I just gave you, because these are like the National Book Award, right? Because we're not going to change their minds. They are who they are. They're run by who they're run by. So we just continue operating, innovating, and showing up different ways. So
I mean, it's so important. Look, we have 15 minutes and I'm like, we haven't even started. Okay. But it's so important to talk about this very openly and candidly, because we're just not often, I mean, and don't get me wrong, it needs to be deconstructed, right? It's not working for us. It's not working really for anybody. But when we talk about the energy and the investment of energy, I too agree that we need to really find creative and innovative ways to build what is missing. And you've been able to do that. And I want to talk about Gracefully Global, because some of the things that you just spurted off. Now, I know you do these things, but I think, for maybe the general public and perhaps, those who are watching and listening, they already know you. But looking at you, Graciela, it's like, this woman does a ton. So real quick, going to my uncle's funeral, his services last week, it really did shed a different light on him, his military, because that was a different life for him, right? Yeah. But his buddies being there and talking about, he was a drill sergeant and how he double promoted this cadet. I mean, just all the things that he did, right?
Yeah.
His wife's best friend did the actual program and said that just shortly before he passed, that he had drawn up the blueprint because he wanted to build a Boys and Girls Club where they live, and they live in the country.
Okay.
In Mississippi. And when you're talking about the story of, veterans and military, I want to talk about what else you do to promote and encourage the story. Not only are you traveling and pushing this narrative, but you also assist individuals in creating brands for this reason, veterans specifically for this reason. Just talk a little bit about that work, because it's all, in one pot, but not really.
Well, again, yes, I do a lot, but also I remind people I've been doing this little by little, day by day for 10 years. And that's just as long as I've had the company. I've been doing it before that. Right. But so I want to just acknowledge that, because I think many times, especially young people, we all want the success right now.
Yeah,
it's instant. And it's, I always accuse people of, it sounds like you're suffering from instant gratification syndrome. It's like you want it all right now. It doesn't work that way, right?
That's
you
build syndrome.
Okay. Whew, and so I get that. But I want to say this, everything that we're talking about, all the different books, all the classes, everything, this has been a decade of work, and I'm really tired.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Right. But I love it. It's work that I love. So what you're talking about there, it's succinctly summarized on my LinkedIn profile. I'm actually going to read the banner that's there right now.
Yeah.
I'm an award-winning bilingual storyteller who helps others become epic storytellers of their value by co-creating authentic personal branding with students, veterans, military spouses, and more. So while telling the stories and writing the stories and getting the stories out into the world, which is all the awareness, the media relations, the marketing, the campaigns, the actual delivery, the keynotes, school visits, all of it, right? At some point, I got a call from some student veterans in Baltimore, an Army veteran, a Latina specifically, who called me and said, I see you online. I see you talking about your work and the books and the work that you're doing, but it never feels like you're bragging. Can you come out here and teach us how to do that? Because we student veterans, we are starting our own businesses, but we all hate talking about ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm like, and you're not going to attract anybody or intrigue anybody if you can't talk about yourself, your achievement, and why you're starting that venture, right? So I said, so you'd like me to come out there and teach you how to do your own personal branding? She's like, yeah, could you do that? I said, sure. And that is where this work that you're talking about started. It's the process by which, and I don't know, we didn't mention this, but after I flew for 10 years in the Air Force, I completed my master's degree in international business management and marketing. And I transitioned into the civilian world to do global marketing for a technology company headquartered in Germany, but in the Silicon Valley office. So I went from the flight deck straight into product marketing management, end to end, understanding the process from what is this technology and who cares? And how do I translate that into messages to motivate first the sales teams to care, and then second to motivate the markets that they're selling to. And that whole process, I was able to use that expertise, Tiffany, and create a workshop that teaches people how to extract the best, most authentic parts from their own human selves to write a compelling statement, a branding story, introduce yourself, where you're going next, and to do it in a way that's really only yours. You're the only one that's going to be able to say that.
Yeah.
And that's what that is. And so I've done those workshops. I went out to Baltimore after that call. I did 2 days of workshops, trained small groups, like 15, 20 veterans at a time in the process. And the end goal, when we're done, is each and every one of them has an index card, a succinct little introduction by which they can be intriguing to their target audience that they want to influence next. So think of it as the marketing process applied to people to cause an action, cause your audience to do something. And I've now taught thousands of veterans in so many universities, and then also veteran serving organizations, and then CalVet, our agency here in California, basically the state level veteran affairs. They took me on an 8-city road trip 2 years ago to bring this professional development skill to veterans. So yeah, that's where it started. But guess what? Business owners need compelling personal branding expertise, right? Girl Scouts, college students, community college students transferring to 4-year schools, librarians trying to get grants, you name it, I've done it. But my niche, the people that I know need it the most because of the chaos that is the military transition, it's the military community. And this is the book that I produced over the pandemic. I didn't even know. You didn't even know, did you? Yep, because I produced it and then my father died a week later. So like we got it launched and then I disappeared. But it's called Brand Before Your Resume. And brand is actually an acronym that we define on the back because military people love acronyms. And brand is become relevant, authentic, noticeable, and differentiated. Brand before your resume.
Before your resume.
And
I have got to get one.
And it's your marketing guide, basically, and it's the whole process that I teach. It's the questions that I ask and everything in here for you to draft your first version of your personal brand targeted for whoever you're trying to attract next, with the option to then do a one-on-one consultation with me to get it polished, done, ready to go. And that is, tell me what, so that's what, 5th book, 6th book? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
6th book. Okay. So I do remember a story about that and we talked about it, but I never seen it before.
Yeah. So literally we launched it right in front of Veterans Day. I think it was like November 7th, 8th, 9th, right? Like that. Yeah. And it was a virtual book launch with 48 military veterans and spouses that all joined in. And we were all together. They got their networks buying and we went straight to #1 in the military families category on Amazon. Yeah. And then literally a week later, I got the word that my father had stage 4 lung cancer and he passed 4 days later. So whatever marketing plan I had started kind of stopped. And then there were holidays and then I disappeared. And then sometime in February, I resurfaced out of my hole. And so I'm getting back to telling the world about it. But I've been coaching student veterans all the way through the pandemic. I did a workshop on Friday with Portland State, and then I've been coaching them this weekend, with the consultation to get them done and ready to create their LinkedIn profiles. So it is the storytelling, but it is applied at the person level for what they need to happen next. So that's why the description is the succinct description of who I am. I love telling my stories for all the reasons we talked about, but I also love helping others tell their stories to be intriguing because they are intriguing people and have whatever happen next for them. So
I love that. 6th book. I got to get it. Brand Before Your Resume, which is so needed right now. Branding in and of itself has been deemed as like neoliberal. Like this is the way that we really get our voice out. Right.
You have to attract people. You have to intrigue and interest. Like nothing happens until you do that. No one asks for your resume.
You have to set yourself apart. You have to be, different, better, or both,
Yep.
We have 5 minutes left. And when we talk about this, I know it's ridiculous. It's like, here we go, Graciela. I'm so glad that we're recording this. It'll be available on YouTube to watch, replay. I know I'm going to watch it again because I'm just in awe. Like Graciela is just like phenomenal. But I do want to talk about quickly this next Goodnight Captain Mama and how it all ties into the work that you're presently doing amidst COVID to get our children on a healthier educational plane, to get them engaged in this conversation about what their future looks like, right? We are smack dab in this transition of the future of work and the future of education. And it's digital literacy. We've got to do a better job branding yourself, communicating as a cultural communications consultant. This is why Imaginary keeps falling off at times because I work a lot. But as someone who's seen this, you read it in your bio. We're talking about values. We're talking about meaning. We're talking about culture, setting ourselves apart, using our voice. I want to talk about real quick the most recent Kiva campaign. And how the third book is coming out and how we are going to be in the air because I'm looking forward to it. Tell us about I would go into it. I was floored when you called me, and then there was so much going on. But next I looked up and it was completely funded, and I'm like, who does that?
Oh, yeah. Well,
tell us about it.
Yeah. So this is the second time we've done a Kiva campaign. And for those who don't know, it's very important to define what Kiva is. It's kiva.org. That's the site. And it is a micro lending community that I first connected with 15 years ago when they first started. And what Kiva, they're headquartered in San Francisco. And the idea was simple. Around the world, there are men and women, a lot of times it's women, who have an idea for something that can bring them better economic, situations and gifts, if only they had a little bit of capital to start their business. And we're talking about the very first campaign I funded was a woman in India in a village, and she wanted to buy a satellite phone so that she could make phone calls and find out what is the actual price of rice, so that when they sell their rice, they're not getting some below market rate because they're ignorant of the actual market price, right?
Totally.
So she needed like $250 to buy a phone. So we give her $5, $10, $20 to lend, and then we get that money back when she pays her loan back. So it's a really cool idea that was started, like, I want to say it's probably 20 years now. Wow. And only recently did Kiva bring that capability to the United States and get approval from whoever approves these things to create philanthropic loans here in the United States. And what does that mean, Tiffany? 0%. Okay. So the first time that we did it was a $6,000 loan at 0% in 2017, January 2017. And then the most recent one that you're referring to, because of COVID and so many small businesses suddenly having their revenue so negatively impacted with all the events and schools, everything that canceled, like we were impacted, they decided to increase the amount of working capital up to $15,000 that small businesses could get through a campaign.
Wow.
0% interest, 0% interest. Let me repeat that.
That's crazy. Interest. Crazy.
Okay? It's like your aunt giving you the money and, say, just pay me back over the next 3 years. I don't expect any interest, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it's like. It's familial. It's social underwriting. And during COVID now, they've had like a 3-month grace period. So you get the cash, you can implement it in your business, start doing your next product development, marketing campaign, hire a specialist, whatever you need. And you've got 3 months before you even need to start paying it back. Okay. Wow. So the campaign you're referring to, we did, and yeah, there's a whole process. And if, I'll send you a link on when we did the first one. That $6,000 campaign was done in 1 day. And why was it done in a day? Because I lined up everybody that was going to start the campaign. It's the private fundraising phase first. The faster you complete that, you've got 15 days. That's just people that you know. Okay. They told me I need 22 people to lend at least $25.
Okay.
That's all. This time in March, they told me I needed 10.
You needed
10 people, right? And the faster you do that, then you show up on the main live Kiva site of 1.8 million people just waiting to lend you money. Okay. And again, intrigue people, tell your story. Right. And so that happened like that. We had the first 10 in under a day. So we were all over the front page for Kiva. And that whole campaign was done in 6 days.
6
6
days.
days, $15,000, which I got the following week in our bank account for our business. This is for business owners. Okay. And right away, the very next day, I met with our illustrator, said, this project is back on. Okay. Because I'm not going to do it and not be able to pay her. You know, I need the capital to keep going. And we have the cover. I got my designer back on. So Linda did the art, Susie did the book design, and we're going to unveil it this week. So I'm asking people to go to captainmama.com, join the Captain Mama community. It's a little box that says join the Captain Mama community. Check the box for, launches. Okay. Launches and pre-orders. And we're unveiling the art and the title this coming week.
I cannot wait to see it.
That's why you do these campaigns. Like, we have this next product development we need to do, but I can't dip into the operating fund for the business, right now, because we're still operating, but we need this product development R&D money. And that's what this is. So that's what is so great about Kiva. And, when I was doing the campaign, Tiffany, there was only 30 people in the United States, 30 people running campaigns in this country. Everybody else in the world is doing it. We don't know about it. And it's an amazing resource. So I want people to know about it. And Gracefully Global Group is now a trustee there. So when it's time to do trustee endorsement, feel free to just check it. That just means that you're going to be visible in front of the people that already funded our campaigns.
I mean, when I like I said, work was just so crazy. Mm-hmm. I just remember getting the emails, because of course I get the emails, I was getting the ones from you, but also from Kiva. And I'm like, did this lady just fund in 6 days?
Yeah. I have a process, but what's more important is you've got that 1.8 million people at Kiva already waiting to see what's the next cool campaign I can lend money to, which when you do a Kickstarter or when you do something like that, you don't have that. It's all on you. You have to do the heavy lifting. And on Kiva, I have to do the heavy lifting with my team to start to do the private one. Right. But it's so we, there's an article at Kiva where they interviewed me when we did the first campaign in 1 day. They called me in and say, what did you do? Because that's the fastest loan ever. What did you do?
Yeah.
So I did my 5 tips to fast funding with Kiva, like the exact process that I use to activate everybody to be ready when we go live. And that's the secret, is just do those things, right? And so this time, it was over in 6 days, but you did get in and you are one of the supporters. So thank you for being one of the supporters. You did get in.
When you called me, I was like, like, what do I need to do?
You got to get on the phone. Hey, we're launching on Friday. I'm going to send you the link. Okay. So it's you're activating your tribe and your supporters. And then you were one of the first 10. And because we were so fast, we were very favorably treated by the Kiva algorithms. And we were like #1 visible site on the women in the US and the US entrepreneurs. And it was Women's History Month. That's the other thing, right? So they were featuring women. So then that's just more eyeballs. And then you literally sit back and you tell your tribe and they're still telling people and all that. But it's the Kiva community at this point. They're seeing it and they're seeing this hot campaign and they're seeing it's already 74% funded 3 days in. And they're like, oh, let me get in on that before it closes. Right. And so you have that amazing community built in. Why it's so important that people know this, because who doesn't need working capital, Tiffany?
Well, and the community, you and I, this is the conversation. Like, I pivoted Imagery this year last year, really, because again, I knew I was working too much and I knew that I could chime in with some support, but I was working so much. The community. Right. So I've gone away. Like, I don't do email marketing anymore. Mm-hmm. If I don't have a present relationship with you, I'm not interested in engaging you and convincing you that, Imagery is what it is. Instead, my focus is on my current community. And I can't say enough how important community is. You just illustrated it through this story. You just illustrated it through, getting on the phone, hammering the phones. Hey, I'm doing this. It was a no-brainer for me, And I would imagine the other 9 women as well, if they were women. I don't want to be biased.
There are men and women. They're both.
So community though.
It's community. And that's part of it. It's, I make a list of the 100 people that I can get, like I can call on the phone. Okay. And sometimes they're clients, sometimes they're friends, they're a mix, right? And I just think who is going to be who, and you know this, you've got those people closest to you. Who can I call to get on board with this? And we women are really good at crowd fundraising, or in this case, crowd micro lending. We're really good at this because we like to nurture community and we like to have those relationships versus if you're on Kickstarter, you're like, yeah, I hope the Kickstarter strangers are going to support my idea.
Totally.
You know, and then it's just back to your community, and it's just a big heavy lift. But the community is everything. And in fact, what I'm doing right now, just kind of preview, is when we get the text perfected, which is going to happen in the next 3 days, give it to the translator, give it to my production team. I'm going to turn around and I'm setting Gracefully Global Group up for starting, no kidding, to go after angel investment money, because the company as it is now with just me as the salesperson, it's too limiting. You know, we can't reach all the people we want to reach.
We need to.
So we've developed the whole plan now to bring on a sales director, marketing manager, all the people that I know I need, and awesome. The markets that we've already tested. So yeah, we're going to go after angel investing, and it might be another crowdfunding campaign on like a Plum Alley or something like that for women, you know, women investors and women entrepreneurs. But I'm ready to go big and go get them, you know, $800,000 million of capital and deploy it so we can get where we need to go. So that's happening. That's the thing.
See what I mean when I say accomplished? As someone who I've always looked to, like Graciela, we're 6 minutes over. I really wish we had more time because this conversation and everything in it is critical. The support, the stories, the guidance, the mentorship. Just all of it, the family, you know, and how we're managing it all, how we're taking it one day at a time, but the growth and the staging through it all, you know, as a means to support.
Mentorship. Yeah. And the mentorship is key. You know, one of the things I'm doing next week is I'm meeting with a gentleman who I met when I was at Bunker Labs, which is a veteran entrepreneur community.
Yes, Bunker Labs.
He writes contracts for angel investors and LLCs. So when you get that money, he's the guy that writes the contract. So I don't know anything about that. But just like when I told you when I was a teenager in my counselor's office, how do I go to college?
Yep.
If I know that I can find people and that I have them in my universe, or that somebody that I know can connect me. How can I go get my first $1 million in angel capital money? And, you know, what would that look like? What would that contract look like? He's going to show me and teach me.
Yeah.
Right? And then it won't be mysterious. Like, well, I don't know how to go get angel money. You know, well, I'm going to find out. Right. And then I'll go do it. And then you'll see me do it. We could talk about that. But that's what it is. It's like we have to be from our communities. You know, many times we stay small because we don't have those connections. But guess what? We can find those connections and we can make those connections, and they're ready to be found and to mentor us. But just like my counselor, she was helping me because I was in her office.
Yeah.
She didn't help the other kids who didn't show up, who had decided that college was too hard or too expensive for them, and they didn't go to the office.
Yeah. Closed mouths.
They're there. Right. They're there. And so I see the exact same parallel, kind of wrapping it up, right? The exact same parallel of how I ended up doing something crazy, like getting a 4-year scholarship, going to the Air Force and flying. It started in that conversation with my counselor. How can I? And that's the question I always say, like, just learn those 3 words. How can I? Don't like, I can't. No, you can, but how?
Because you know there's a way. Yeah.
Right.
But it's how.
That's it. That's the key to all of it.
That is, I mean, I'm so looking forward. Again, every time I talk to Graciela, I was about to say, every time I talk to her, incredibly inspiring, like through it all. I'm talking about, like we talked about Dad's death, and we talked about just resurfacing, keep chomping at the bit, getting bigger, staying intentional. It's been such an honor to know you. Honestly, Graciela, it really has. It's been incredible.
You know, the pleasure and joy is mine. And I'm looking forward to the day when, again, we're together in the same place and I can give you a hug.
I know.
You know, whether you're coming out here, I'm going out there. You know, the day is coming again.
It is. It is. Bringing the kids. Me too. You guys, please, if you're watching, tell us how much you love this. Make sure you comment. You see the ticker at the bottom of the screen. Please follow Graciela. I was joking with her earlier. She's like, is this on Facebook? I'm like, wait, you're not on Facebook anymore. She's like, you know. So
I'm a supporter.
yeah, no, I get it. Look, follow her if you can on LinkedIn, and definitely go to gracefullyglobal.com commerce. There's also captainmama.com. You sign up for the launch. You got to see that. You got to see that cover reveal. Don't get me started on books 1 and 2, because book 1 has the most adorable patch, Latinovations. There's so much to continue the conversation. And I'm going to blog about this because I blogged about it prior, but I'm going to blog about some other things that we didn't get to because, you know, there's more to the story. But I want to thank you for your time and your ingenuity, knowing that it is like, it's always popping. It's always popping.
Well, you know, when you serve communities and you create because you really want better futures for kids and communities, and when you reflect on the miracles of your life and you can turn around and create something for others to like see some of it and maybe be inspired by it, I think that's like the most wonderful thing to do. And
That's the reward.
I just feel like there's so many more things I can do. So the discipline and the hard part for me is just to say, okay, but I can't do all those things. So what can I do next? What's the next thing I can do? And it's really hard because it really is all coming from this servant heart place. And you want to do too many things. And so I think that's the hardest part, I think, for both of us.
No, it is. But it's so good again to know that there's a Graciela, there's a Tiffany, there are millions, there's an Irie, there's a Kalila, there are millions of women who just, the tenacity is there because we know that this is a part of a much bigger, much grander picture. Thank you so much.
We rely on each other for our learning too, right? So, you know, how do I reach this? How do I do that? Just we ask each other, and that's the magic. So
that is the magic. That is the magic. Thank you so much for saying that because it's so true. You know, I do have those in my circle that I can't ask per se, but then I have those who I can, and I regularly do. You know, so I'm grateful for you, my dear. Thank you so much. Love to the family. Again, this will be available as soon as StreamYard makes it available. I will make it available via YouTube. The notifications will be there. Please, please, please engage with Graciela. The conversation is not over on LinkedIn via Gracefully Global and CaptainMama.com.
CaptainMama.com is the immediate, visit to sign up to be part of
for the launch. Yes.
The other places, I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. Those are where we'll actually hear back from me. So
gotcha. I mean, she's always out there, like, seriously, you guys follow her on Instagram, like, just get acquainted with her. You will love her as much, if not more. I'm telling you, she's awesome. Thank you, Irie. Thank you, Kalila. Thank you, Sue, everybody who joined. Again, I'm going to post this, and I wish you all a beautiful Sunday.
Well, thank you, Tiffany. It's always a joy to spend time with you.
Thank you, my dear. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.